Good morning. It is Monday, December the 13th, and this is The Drill. I'm Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, welcoming all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers. So today, after the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare and the Star-Spangled Banner and the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance, we are going to have Own Your Own Stuff, Inflation, No Free Lunch, School shooters, vaccine mandate, models for change. All that and more when I come back. Thank you. And now the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for December 13th. I am your fortress. If you will walk righteously and speak uprightly and stop your ears from hearing of bloodshed and shut your eyes to avoid looking upon evil, then I will cause you to dwell on the heights. I will be your place of defense in the fortresses of rocks. Bread will be given to you, and water for you will be sure. I will be the strength of my people and a fortress of salvation for my anointed ones. I am your rock of refuge to which you can always go. I will save you when you call, for I am your rock and your fortress. Prayer declaration. Lord, you are my steadfast love and my fortress, my high tower and my deliverer, my shield, and he in whom I trust and take refuge, who subdues people under me. I will say of the Lord, you are my refuge and my fortress, my God, in whom I trust. Whoever fears you has a secure fortress, and you will be a refuge for their children. Amen. And that was the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for December 13th. Thank you. Own your stuff. That is the way the left managed to brainwash everybody into believing that life is inherently subjective. And it's false. And we know with absolute certainty that it is false because if life were inherently subjective, it would be vastly different than what it is today, and it would be obviously so. It would be obviously different, and it would be obviously subjective. But it isn't. It is obviously objective. Reality is. And yes, the experience of and the communication of reality is subjective, but those are two separate things. But again, the way that that they brainwashed us was by changing the way we communicate and insisting, instead of we describing things in a realistic manner, we describe them in an unrealistic or a psychologistic manner, telling people how we feel, what we see. So in other words, instead of saying, and they started this with relationships. So you go into a relationship and you say, well, I'm mad at my wife because she didn't cook dinner. Her job is to cook dinner, right? So then the psychologist turns you around by having you describe your feelings. Well, how do you feel about that? And then they tell you not to use language that is provocative. Okay, in other words, don't make accusations. Simply talk about what you see, what you think, and how you feel. So with the wife, it would be, I came home, dinner wasn't prepared, and I was upset. And so then they'll tell you to communicate that to your wife. But that's not accurate. That's not accurate at all. And because it's inaccurate, it puts you in a position where no problem solving can be accomplished. So again, to review real quick, we communicate today very subjectively. We own everything the way I feel, what I think, don't get me wrong, all that, because we've been brainwashed to think and communicate that way. But that brainwashing is invalid. It causes us to communicate ineffectively, and it's wrong, and it's got to go. And we need to communicate things as though they are in a realistic way. Let's put it that way. Thank you. So one of the news items lately is inflation, of course. And so last week, the numbers that came out show that inflation is up significantly. Supposedly, it's the highest rate since 1982, whatever. The point is, for the true conservative, is this is another validation that we should return to the gold standard. Let's go back to the gold standard. And at the very least, what we need to do is get rid of the single tender or legal tender laws, the laws that force people to take and accept and do business in dollars. So that if you want to go ahead and do business in gold or silver or something like that, you can do that. But the point is that the thing, we cannot have a real republic if we have the government running our economy. And that's the way it is right now. A large part of my life and your life is run by the government, and that's the economy. I don't know that when I go, even if there's minimum wages and all that, so what if my money is worthless? Who cares whether or not they're paying me $15, $20, $25, $50 an hour if a loaf of bread is $50? Who cares? Okay, and this is all on the government, and the government goes ahead and manipulates things, more specifically, Nancy Pelosi. There are people that are, even in the Democrat Party, that aren't as radical about this in terms of spending as Nancy Pelosi is, that are common sense oriented. And so this, again, your whole life is going to be run by the government. We don't know what's going to happen here. The statistics get manipulated. There's supposed to be some built-in mechanisms that are supposed to keep the government in check. For instance, bond interest rates. The more that the government borrows, the higher the interest rates go, and that's supposed to be a signal to the government that, hey, you need to cut back. You need to quit borrowing money. You need to quit selling bonds. But the Nancy Pelosi and friends, they go to the banks and threaten them, cajole them, whatever, to keep those bond interest rates low. I also understand that it used to be, apparently not anymore, but that that they used to do, had it set up so that when interest rates did go up, it was for future borrowing. Now, if you raise the interest rates, it's on everything, all the notes that are outstanding, the interest is going up. And Dan Bongino sees, or the same thing that I see, that you can't outrun mathematics. Nancy Pelosi is convinced that psychology rules all, and that as long as we stay nice and cool, nice and frosty, everything will be all right. No. The mathematics is the mathematics. It's going to get to the point where it's faster, and faster. Like I said, it might be every 6 months when you got to raise the debt ceiling. Then it's going to be every 3 months, and every month, and every week, every day. And pretty soon you're not going to be able to get anything done in Congress except raise the debt ceiling. And then you're at a point where no matter how fast you raise it, it's not fast enough. And at that point, we have now reached the ultimate crisis. Now, the left may decide to use that crisis as an excuse to crack down, to say, okay, well, that's it. The Democrat experiment is failed. We're going to go ahead and Nancy Pelosi is going to run the government. We're taking over. We're breaking out the National Guard, etc. And so that is, but it's their motto is on the left: if it doesn't fit, force it. If it breaks, it was meant to be replaced anyway. And that's the way they approach the government. But again, this is to remind people the true conservative says we need to move to the gold standard, because the gold standard puts the individual in charge. The gold standard is the way to run a republic. Thank you. And now I'm going to be reading a selection from No Free Lunch. Quote, man naturally desires not only to be loved, but to be lovely, or to be that thing which is the natural and proper object of love. He naturally dreads not only to be hated, but to be hateful, or to be that thing which is the natural and proper object of hatred. He desires not only praise, but praiseworthiness, or to be that thing which, though it should be praised by nobody, is, however, the natural and proper object of praise. He dreads not only blame, but blameworthiness, or to be that thing which, though it should be blamed by nobody, is, however, the natural and proper object of blame, unquote. Adam Smith. What is at stake in centralized control economies is nothing less than the loveliness of man. The desires of our fallen nature are tamed to some degree, not entirely, by market forces. And our longings for love, loveliness, and reputation are enhanced and served by market forces. Our moral sentiments do not merely care for a public reputation, but must be cultivated to care for what we know to be true of ourselves. A market economy most cultivates human flourishings when these sentiments are most elevated. And that was a selection from the book called No Free Lunch. Thank you. In the news is more school shootings. And there's been some school shootings, I think, in California and in the Midwest. It's almost become to the point where it's ho-hum. And all of this traces back to, in terms of the motivation. Everybody talks about the gun and how come this individual got a gun. And the child, usually it's a child that's doing this, somebody under the age of 18, where did they get the gun? And it's all centered around the gun, but not centered around the motivation. Why is it that anybody would start doing mass shooting? Somebody is otherwise sane. Somebody breaks out of an insane asylum and goes out and steals a gun or something, starts shooting the place up. Well, obviously they're insane, and we understand then why it is that they did what they did. But why the school shootings? And I think in a lot of cases, the case in Michigan is may prove to be a notable exception, but all other cases, and we should assume as true conservatives that it's coming back to revolutionary tendencies, that these are kids that think that they're going to start the revolution. it is Nancy. That goes back to Nancy Pelosi and the people on the left that are always preaching revolution, revolution, revolution. They preach it directly and they preach it indirectly through reform. They'll use the code word reform, which really means revolution, and that they promote constant change, 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 change. And so that goes back to them. They need to be put on the hot seat. Every time one of these shootings occurs, it is Nancy Pelosi that needs to answer for it, and she needs to be told that you're the one that is putting these ideas into the kids' heads. Whether or not how they're getting the guns is a secondary issue, and that's a parental issue. But in the motive for it, if the kid says, well, I think I'm going to go out in a blaze of glory, I'm going to start a revolution, my life really doesn't mean much, so I'm going to go out and start a revolution. If I get killed in the process, so much the better, then that again goes right back to Nancy Pelosi and her cohorts. And she needs to be held accountable for it. People need to demand from her apologies, and she needs to promise that she's never going to do that again. She should really leave office. She's got so much blood on her hands, she should leave office. So that's the true conservative knows and understands that actions have consequences. This is why we're not neutral. This is why the cult of neutrality is dead, because actions have consequences. Things don't just happen. They're made to happen. But Nancy Pelosi and her ilk want everybody to think that things just happen. And then they get to say, well, see, it's because of capitalism. And if it wasn't for capitalism, we wouldn't have school shootings. We wouldn't have all of the other things that they don't like. Tornadoes, for instance. We had a tornado that went through Kansas yesterday or the day before yesterday and did significant damage. And so those are things, again, that are made to happen. It's a weather phenomenon. We understand how they happen, and we're able to save a lot of lives because we're able to predict them. We can see the conditions forming for well in advance, some days in advance, sometimes a week in advance. We know that at a certain particular time that there's going to be an increased likelihood of tornadoes. The point is that, again, things are made to happen. They don't just happen. But Nancy Pelosi and her ilk want you to believe that things just spring up out of nowhere, and they're not made to happen. There's no consequences for your actions. So Nancy Pelosi is the instigator. Her and her ilk, her followers, are the ones that create this by being revolutionaries and romanticizing revolution and revolutionary activities that appeals to kids and candy coating it. It's like the left always complains that tobacco companies are sugarcoating tobacco so as to hook children. Well, they're doing exactly that. Nancy Pelosi. They're doing what they accuse the tobacco companies of doing, and that is sugarcoating revolution to make it appeal to children. Shame on her for that. Shame on her followers for that. They must stop doing it. Stop doing that immediately. The other part of this is that they have ruined the family and ruined the idea of being a parent and parenting. And in so doing, let kids on their own. There's a lot of parents that say, well, how are they going to learn if I don't let them go? And there's a lot of people that talk about helicopter parents that are too much watching their kids, hovering, like a helicopter. And better too much supervision than not enough. Look again what happened in the case in Michigan. That was negligence of the first order. And what's a real shame is everybody saw it coming. Everybody, the parents saw it coming, the principal saw it coming, and nobody did a damn thing about it. The principal should have taken a stand, called the parents in and said, take him home. And don't bring him back until, and issue the ultimatum. But get him off the school campus immediately. Why he didn't do that, it just blows my mind. I can't understand that. The parents are under arrest. I would think that they should look at arresting the principal, and if not arresting the principal, then certainly suing him. The parents of the dead and injured. should definitely sue the school system and sue the principal. They always sue the school system, by the way, because instead of suing the individual, because nobody's interested in justice anymore, they're just interested in deep pockets. You can't get a lawyer to help you sue the principal. The principal made the decision. He's the culprit here. He's made the decision to let this kid stay on campus. The kid ends up shooting everybody, and then the principal may end up walking away. He's not going to be criminally charged. He's not going to be civilly charged. It's going to be the school district that's going to pay, and that means you and me. You and I, as homeowners, are going to end up having our taxes raised or assessments or whatever, but it's going to eventually come back to you and me, and it shouldn't. So, but the principle or the part of this is twofold. The thing I'm trying to get to is parenting. It is so important to be a parent and to point out things. If you're not at the television when you see these things happening with your kids, pointing it out and telling them this is evil. Don't you ever do something like this. And drilling it into your kids, you're not a parent. You're being a friend. Children don't need any more friends. What they need is parents. And then also, Nancy Pelosi et al. Have got to shut up with this revolution nonsense. They're going to knock it off. Quit romanticizing revolution and quit talking about it, period. And or they need to get out of office. They should be ashamed of themselves. If there was any true justice, they would be prosecuted along with the parents for contributing to the delinquency of this minor, and they would shut up about revolution. Thank you. Vaccine mandates. Another thing on that. I was just thinking about this the other day. Is that the left likes to be reality shaper, right? So this is the way they do it with vaccine mandates. The right goes out and makes an issue of vaccine mandates, or it might be even mask mandates. They do this. People on the right do it not so much because they're upset about the mandate itself, but they're upset about what comes next. We've been lied to by our government, and nobody has bothered to apologize for it. Nobody has bothered to make any sort of amends in government. Nancy Pelosi, nobody. We've been lied to. We were told when this pandemic first started, 2 weeks. Okay, so now it's 2 years later, and we don't have the dramatic lockdowns we used to have, but even that took way, way too long. And we have a pretty screwed up economy now because people can't figure out what's going on anymore, whether we have temporary inflation or because all of a sudden people are able to go out and spend money, or if the inflation is more serious. They don't know what the deal is with unemployment, and they don't know what the deal is with shortages of labor, what's going on with everything. The whole world is just screwed up because we were told to shut down and stay home for 2 weeks, which ended up turning into 2 years for all intents and purposes. So we have the masks and the vaccines. And the question for conservatives and ersatz conservatives is what's next? If the government is going to lie to us and tell us that it's only 2 weeks and that we have to do this, we got to wear masks, but only until we get, say, a vaccine. And then once the vaccine gets here, we're still wearing masks. And then it is mandatory vaccine. Well, what's after that? When is it that the government is going to say, okay, we're done? We're done. We're done being overbearing. We're done issuing decrees and proclamations and acting like a dictatorship. When is that going to be over? And we don't hear anything from the government. The government doesn't say, let this go until a date certain, and we promise that we're going to go ahead and restore things to normal. No such thing. So it looks like that this is a way of ushering in a more authoritarian style government. That's what's got conservatives upset. That's why conservatives are out running around, going to stores and getting in fights with the proprietors and just generally creating havoc. They're not doing it in a good way. They're not doing it in a smart, tactically effective way, but that's the thinking behind it. I want to stop this in the nip this in the bud now because I don't want to wait and see what's coming next. Okay, so they got a point for that, but the left doesn't recognize that. They don't say, "Oh, gee, we got a problem here. Let's see what we can do to fix it." What they do is they simply mischaracterize what it is that the right is doing, and they claim that it's all about vaccination. Vaxxers and anti-vaxxers. That's all this is about. It's not about the future. It's not about whether or not the government is going to continue to have a heavy-handed role in our lives, dictating every single thing we do. No, it's just about masks, or it's just about whether or not you get a shot in the arm. And the purpose of that, again, is to ridicule, make the right look ridiculous so as to shut them up. Shut everybody up and shut up the criticisms of the government and people in government for making the decisions they're making. So that's one of the things that we need to keep in mind, true conservative or not, that what it is that people are objecting to. The people that object to the vaccines and objecting to the masks aren't objecting merely to the masks and the vaccines. And now they could do a better job. Dan Bongino and all the people on the right-wing talk radio could do a hell of a lot better job explaining that. Hey, we're upset because we don't know what's coming down the pike. Today it's masks, tomorrow it's vaccines. What happens the day after that? You know, we still, around the world, there's still lockdowns. Australia's still got draconian lockdowns. In most of the states in the United States, not so much. And nothing, of course, in Florida. Thank God for Governor DeSantis. But remember that. What we're about is what's coming next. When do we get to have our freedoms back? And that's one thing, dealing with this. We also have to think about the future. How did we get here? We got here because we allowed our government to create this. We have, every state apparently has some kind of a law, an emergency law, that if there's some kind of an emergency, the legislature can simply turn all authority, all governmental authority, over to the governor, who will then rule by decree. He will just simply issue diktats and make things happen. That has to go. It has to go. This is the reason we're in the position we're in now. Okay, so when this is over, even before it's over, we should be taking steps to make sure that those laws are overturned. They may even have that law in Florida. The governor they're lucky in that they have a governor that's not going to execute that law, or maybe he is, but he's just doing it for good rather than for ill. But the point is, those laws have to be repealed. We have to get those damn things repealed. Once those laws are repealed, we're not going back to this. We get to decide whether or not to stay home or go to work or whatever. Wear mask, not wear mask, vaccine, not vaccine. But as long as we have laws in place that in effect create a dictatorship within a particular state, we're screwed. Thank you. So how does one succeed? There's two models for success and for achieving change. The usual model is, let's say that you want to be a baseball player. So what you do is you go out and get what baseball players have, or have what baseball players have, a mitt, a ball, a bat. Then you go play baseball, then you become a baseball player. The left says, no, that's not the way to do it. That if you want to be a baseball player, you got to turn this whole thing on its head. And you've got to be a baseball player first, then you will do what baseball players do, and then you will have what baseball players have. So that's my question. Which is the proper model for change? Is it the real way, the realistic way, or the psychologistic way? The left's analysis of this is, of course, psychologistic. They deny reality. They say that there is no such thing as reality, and that everything is in our head. Everything is psychological in nature. Therefore, if we're going to make changes, we're going to have to start, we're going to have to approach it psychologically and start with a vision. And then there is, of course, the real way, the realistic way, which is, as I described, you have what baseball players have, do what baseball players do, and then you become the baseball player. So, in a lot of instances today, when we're seeing the model for change is the left's model for change, that they try to get in your psyche and convince you that the things that they want to be are already here. And then that's the way they basically psychologically brainwash you into believing, for instance, that you're socialist. What better way, as far as they're concerned, to create a socialist than to convince them they're socialist to begin with, or that there is no other alternative except socialism, and that capitalism is simply a mirage. It doesn't matter or doesn't exist. It's a fiction. Try to turn that around so that you walk around believing you're a socialist. If you believe you're a socialist, you're going to think socialist, talk socialist, act socialist, vote socialist. So that's the again, the models, the two different models for change. Thank you. And I want to remind everybody to check out or listen to, I'm trying to get away from using the left-wing term check out, but listen to John and Ken, Rick Edelman on KFI, John and Ken show Monday through Friday, Rick Edelman on Sundays, and because they're an excellent example of how to think, how to communicate like a true conservative, and it matters. Because how you think is how you communicate is going to be how you act is going to result in how you vote. So you talk left-wing today, you're voting left-wing tomorrow. So it's very, very important you get that straight. So until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.